So sampling is a double-edged sword in that on the one hand you can find something that has a particular quality to it because of the way it was composed, arranged, recorded, produced, and then you can bring it in, chop it up, repitch it, move it around, play around with the fidelity, add other things to it and turn it into something that you otherwise wouldn't have thought of if you didn't have that sample. On the other hand, that then comes with a load of copyright implications that can be a series of hurdles or a complete brick wall when it comes to actually releasing that music. So in this video, I wanted to demonstrate that in the 2020s, there's nothing to stop you from composing little mini songs in whatever style you can think of, and then sampling those as though they're something that you found. So the first one is a fun one. I'm going to do a disco arrangement of a classical piece of music like they used to do in the 70s. I'm thinking Night on Disco Mountain by David Shire, A Fifth of Beethoven, Walter Murphy, Also Sprach Zarathustra, Diodato, etc. So I'm going to do Dance Macabre by Sanson, which is in the public domain, so I can do that. So let's listen to the disco arrangement first, then we'll move on to sampling and remixing it. Told you it was fun, didn't I? So you could see the instruments I used, the guitar, the bass, percussion. There was a clav, which isn't mine, but just happened to be in the studio, so I used it, and a drum synth that's behind me for the old boop boop boops. So all things that are readily available in pretty much every studio, or that there are tons of free or cheap sample packs of. You know, everyone's got 97 clavs, haven't they? And then everything else was done in the box. So a disclosure, this video is sponsored by Spitfire Audio, so all of the sample libraries I'm going to be using are Spitfire libraries, although the majority of them I already owned and had bought with my own money and used in my scoring work and have done for many, many years. So let's listen first to these strings. And here's the really crucial thing with string libraries. You want something that's got lots of different dynamic layers that you can access via velocity, lots of different articulations that you can access by key switches, and then lots of parameters like vibrato and dynamics and expression and things that you can control with CCs, as well as needing to play with the overlap of notes to try and get things to sound more human as well. And I think those strings playing that melody sound pretty convincing to my ears. So Spitfire Chamber Strings is probably my favourite string library because it's a really small ensemble. It's 16 players, 4 first violins, then 3, 3, 3, 3 through the other parts. And that works with pop arranging a million times better than a massive symphonic orchestra, which gives you completely the wrong sound. It's way too big. And also you get into the problem of when you do divided or divisi parts, say you've got 16 or 18 first violins, you start playing more than one note, it just gets utterly absurd. Whereas with 4 first violins, 3 seconds, you can layer things up and it deals with it much more naturally. Now, a theme throughout this video is I'm going to be using the close mics only, and then I'm going to put them in mono and then add some plate reverb, which is much more of that kind of vintage sound to my ears. It seems to be mono things panned around the mix rather than a big stereo miking. And I'm going to basically do that across the board with all the sounds. So next we're going to double the melody with the woodwinds. And again, I'm going to use single woodwinds rather than woodwind ensembles. And here's them playing the melody. And again, you can hear all the little details and things I've done in there with the key switches for the different articulations. Those are there for you to use them like a real player would. They're not just going to stick on one type of articulation all the way through. So be mindful of that and try and make use of that in your arrangements. So the brass, again, I've used solo instruments so that I get a smaller, tighter sound. And then if I do more than one note at a time, it doesn't get over the top. I've used the close mics only again, and I've put them in mono and then added a plate reverb to give it that vintage vibe. Now with the Spitfire libraries, you get lots of different types of shorts: tenuto, marcato, staccato, staccatissimo, if that's how you say it. And those are there for a reason, because you don't always play short notes the same way. There's different types of shorts. And you can see the key switching in that little clip where I've had the ba-da-da-ba. I'd have shorts on the quick ones and then maybe a longer staccato or something on the last one where it rings out a bit more. Okay, so the little details, and these are the things that really make a difference. So I'm using the Joby Burgess percussion, the Spitfire harp, and I'm adding in some timpani rolls, so you get that nice little roll up and then a hit, and you get those harp glissandi. There's lots of different articulations with the harps, and there's all the proper pedaling as well, so you can get the right kind of sound. Close mics, put it in mono, same thing again, and at the end there's a bit of tam-tam as well. So that just adds that extra 5-10% just to make it sound more real. So we've got our Disco Macabre sample. All the rights in it are mine. I can do with it what I please. And I'm going to use an Isla S2400 sampler. You can use a different sampler, hardware, software. But the beauty of samplers is that you can bring the sample in, but as you're resampling it, play around with the sample rate, the bit depth. You can play it at a different pitch as it samples in and then change the pitch afterwards, which will completely change the quality of the sound because of that process. So here is a section that I've chopped up that's now been sampled. So you can hear it's now begging to have like a big beat put to it and some extra stuff. And in fact, that's what I did. I went in and made some different patterns and chopped things up and put it in a song mode. That kind of thing. It's already sounding remixy, isn't it? But then there's one little extra touch that I did that I'll show you now. So the little trick, I'm going to use a Korg MS-50 to do something that I demonstrated with the Mutronics Mutator earlier this year. You don't need an MS-50. I'll give you some options in a moment. So I'm going to stick the entire mix through the low-pass filter. I'm then going to set up a kick drum on a channel and take an individual out and stick that into this audio amplifier because it's got an envelope follower on it. There are many options for envelope followers as well, don't worry. Take the envelope out and stick it into an inverter, so it's the other way around. So what I'm getting is an envelope that's following a kick drum but upside down. And then you stick that into the filter and use it for modulation, and what it'll do is it'll duck the filter but in time with the music, and you'll get that wah-wah kind of sound as the whole mix is running through the filter. Options of things to do it with: any MS-20 variant, any 2600 variant you could do this with, and many Eurorack modules as well. So let's listen to the remix. So next up, I wanted to do a kind of 60s orchestral ballad arrangement that we could then sample and turn into something else. So let's listen to that first. So let's listen to the high strings first. So again, same thing you're going to see throughout this video. I've used the close mics only, put them in mono, and then added a plate reverb to give it that vintage vibe. And it's all about using the different articulations. They're there for a reason. So I've got tremolo, but I've also got tremolo sol pont, which is right on the point of the bow that gives you that really icy, glassy sound. And then the different types of trill, different intervals. There's not just minor seconds and major seconds in there. There's lots of different intervals you can play with. And if you make use of those, you can get these really lovely textures, especially as you then bring in all the CC automation to get the dynamics and the expression going on. And now the lower strings. So again, I'm making use of nice CC automation, and I've got different types of legato. There's different ways of adding portamento, and you can automate the portamento speed. You could see that on the UI. The portamento speed was jumping about as I was playing with that, and it really helps add to that realness and that natural kind of flow that you would get from human musicians. Quick listen to the woodwinds. So I've got the lower woodwinds doubling the lower strings, and then I've got the upper woodwinds doubling and complementing the upper strings. And that's really important as well, keeping things as clean and clear and simple as possible, not having bazillions of things going on at once. If you can state something very clearly and then have another idea very clearly and then another idea very clearly, just those three things may be plenty, and you could get a much bigger sound with just those three than you could by putting tons of parts in. So again, the details, this makes such a difference, as I said on the last demo. I've got the harp with the proper pedaling and all the different articulations you get in there and all the CC control that you have. And I've got the vibraphone from the new Albion Colossus library as well. And just it adds a really lovely texture that you can just blend in with all your strings and woodwinds and brass if you've got them. A little bonus, there's a load of synths in Albion Colossus, and I really like this sound. So I ran it out as another layer to play around with. So for our second remix, we're going to do something different. Because we made the track ourselves from scratch, there's nothing to stop us from sampling all the individual stems rather than the whole mix like you would do if you found a sample on vinyl. And that gives us way more flexibility when we're remixing, and you can still process them all in the same way, change the sample rate and the bit depth and repitch them as they're resampling, and or after they've been sampled, run them through the filters of your sampler, and we wind up with things like this: high strings, Nice and fizzy, isn't it? And low strings. And both together. Woodwinds. It's really Disney, isn't it? That lovely tuned percussion. I love it. And that synth. It's now got a real grit to it, hasn't it? And then your other sounds, so you can have some flexibility to just bring in one thing. Or make another pattern where everything happens. And now we can just add some other instruments with that, and we've got all the ingredients we need for a remix. For the last one, I'm going to use Albion's new Colossus library to do a kind of Godzilla-esque cue. Let's have a little listen. So, brass first. Let's have a quick listen. So again, same thing where you have different articulations, different types of shorts. You're using your CC mapping to make the most out of the sound and push the highs and bring the lows down, so you've got those dynamics. But also Colossus has got two different orchestras that were recorded, different sizes, and you can crossfade between those to get a bigger sound. And you can add hype to the sound, which depending on the patch does something different, so you can get like sub-octaves or distortion or extra top end or extra width, all sorts of different things. So that allows you to get this really over-the-top sound. Okay, and then a spot of percussion. And then strings, again, same kind of approach as we talked about in the past, but making use of that exaggerated, over-the-top, hyped kind of hybrid sound that this library has. We've got some woodwinds in there as well, very similar to what we've talked about already. And then we've got some guitars, which have got some really cool dive bomb effects and things, which I've added in there. So for the Godzilla remix, I'm going to again bring the individual stems in like I did on the last one. I've already dirtied them up. I think you could hear in the mix I'd added some distortion to them, but I really want to muck them up. So what I'm going to do is actually time stretch them, that you can do on many samplers, and depending on the sample rate and the bit depth and the granulation, you can really glitch out the sound. It makes me think of, you know, that Fatboy Slim, the funk soul kind of thing. I think that's an Akai sample, that one. But you get strings like this. Brass. You can hear that in the sound as it's trying to, you know, fill in the gaps. Percussion. The woodwinds just end up as a complete mess. It's a bit like Justice as well. They really grot up their samples. That's the guitars as well. And then you can, you know, mix it with other sounds and really start going to town with it. So let's listen to the remix. So there we go. I hope I have demonstrated that you can totally, by yourself, create little mini songs that you can then sample and use them as though they're a song that you found. I'm not really a remix kind of guy. It's not something I really do. So no doubt you could do something far more interesting than I was doing. So what I was hoping to demonstrate was the kind of ideas and approaches that you could use in your own music. As mentioned, all the audio from this video is available as a download, so you can have a little play with it yourself. Thank you to Spitfire Audio for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you for watching.